So I have the decline of Spain. 1469 was the year Queen Isabel of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon were married, and it was also the beginning of Spain's rise to being a European power. They united both their territories, conquered Granada, and played a part in Columbus's Atlantic voyages, and their dominion expanded in North Africa and Italy. The Spanish and Portuguese empires were joined together in a single line of rulers from 1580 to 1640. The Portuguese were majorly involved in the Caribbean. When the Spanish were starting in their empire, gathering from that, it can be concluded that both the Spaniards and the Portuguese started on the empire building in 1500. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, realized that much could be gained from pirating and getting more resources from oceanic trade in Asia. The already established trade in the Caribbean was not enough to properly sustain the Spaniards. To further assist the Spaniards, an encomienda was put into play, and it decimated the indigenous populations. In Extremadura, a region in Spain well known for its first-generation conquistadores in America, the encomienda was important during the Reconquista. It was put into play because of pressure from supporters of both Columbus on Hispaniola and Cortés in Mexico, not from royal policy. Because of this, the crown was hesitant at first. The distinction between the Spanish and the Portuguese could be more clearly sorted by the mid-1520s. The Spanish Empire conquistó Mexico and then Peru because of the encomienda, serving as an organizer. While they were celebrating their conquest, there were more complications for the Portuguese Asia. Even when the Spaniards were gaining territory, they still continued on with long-distance trade, though not fully involved in it. Even though having already grown bigger than the Portuguese still had opportunities that the Spanish wanted, like the access to Asian markets and products that later on was wanted by other European countries. To help gain access to the spice trade in East Asia, the Spaniards tried to test the waters between the Treaty of them and Mexico. Soon trouble came about on the islands of the Moluccas, seeing the Spanish as a challenge by the Portuguese. Another complication for the Spaniards was some people wanted the church to change their ways and become one of order, practical faith, and purity of manners. A council was wanted to be put into place but the Church of Rome was not inclined to create one. Seeing as the current ways of the church were being opposed by some of the people, it was seen as a threat to the popedom. The princes of Christianity continued talking about setting up some sort of council. The people only wanted men of a higher standing to be their pastors, and the bishops wanted the rights that were previously taken away to be granted once again. It was also said by Luther that the new council put into place would not be presided over by the Pope. This, of course, caused him to be excommunicated. For 25 years, the fight for a new council to be established went on. At first, the brother of the Emperor of Spain, Archduke Ferdinand, was sent to be a supporter of this change. But as time went on, they did not send more representatives, until it was after a time when the Emperor was meeting the Pope that he was keen on making the council a reality. But it was until the point where the conferences had begun to weaken that he had had enough. He gave the Lutherans 6 months' time to decide if they would convert to being a Roman Catholic. The Emperor then stated what men should believe in and teach. If people were not to convert to these ways, they would be imprisoned and sentenced to death. Another way to help the new council was called the Counter-Reformation, which was an institution by bishops empowered by the Council of Trent to enforce it. It was a system of parochial conformities similar to that of the Church of England, in seeking to impose so much more in detail of what they were supposed to do. A faithful Catholic was to attend Mass every Sunday and Holy Day in his church, and he was to receive the church's sacraments other than confirmation from the hands of his parish priest, who would baptize him and marry him and bury him. He would then receive the Eucharist at least once a year at Easter, and with the same regularity, he would go to the priest and repent his sins. Another thing that historians have argued on is if the decline of Spain was actually a real thing or not. Some believe it wasn't really a decline, it was just a failure of achieving their goals. But there was a show of a decline in military and imperial prowess, but Spain from the beginning was already a poor country, and immigration emphasized how poor Spain was already, and it was only a place for the rich.